All right. Hey, we are live.
Yes.
Hey guys, so we're going to turn down the music. This is so much fun. We're in studio today, everybody. Having a blast here with our friend Lindsay Harrell. And today, our topic, we're talking about values and behaviors. This is a big one, right? And yeah, we've talked about this before, but I think, let's dive deep. Okay. So, why don't you tell us how you got into the work of values and behaviors and really turning values into action? That's probably a good start.
Okay, yes. So values, my journey with values has been long. Short story long story short. Oh my gosh. I never did any values work until I ended up having to go on leave from a high-end marketing career at one of the big four accounting firms. And it was during that time that I discovered values and how I wasn't living my real values, how I was not living bad values, but I wasn't living my values.
Yeah.
And because of that, I was a shell of a human. And then that made me go on my own journey. And now what? What do I do now? And so that took me into a path of starting my own business, specifically in content development. However, when you're doing content development right, and you're asking your clients, why are we doing this? What is the purpose of this? Who are you?
And they don't know.
And they don't know, or they say things like, oh, I just need a couple of blogs to figure out who I am. You're like, well, then why am I writing? Right? And so it became very clear that companies were just trying to get the content because at that time, trying to get ahead of getting all the content online, which was booming, or beginning to boom. And it was just, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? What does this mean? And it became very clear they didn't know who they were. So we started doing more brand development work. Who the heck are you, right? What are the things like, so what is your vision? What is your mission? What are your values, key messages, all that verbal brand stuff, because you don't want me doing any digital, beautiful imagery. Mm-hmm. And then it really came down to, okay, well, the different companies were saying the same values over and over and over again as I was doing these questions. And these same values were coming with the same definitions. And I'm like, what the heck? What does this mean?
Did you Google the definition of that? Did you put it on your website?
And when I'm asking them to tell me what that is, it's very generic back. Yeah. And it wasn't clear what it meant. And I started to get a little frustrated, not with my clients, but with myself, because like, don't get me wrong, I've written many a generic value, many a generic key message until I knew better. Mm-hmm. And then
we all did.
Like we all did, right?
Yeah.
And so I started to push back a little with my clients, being like, I'm sorry, I've heard that a little more nurturing than I'm going to be right now, but I've heard this before. Heck, I've written this before. What does this mean to you? Tell me stories. How does this show up? And this was really because I worked with a lot of construction companies in the brand development. Safety was always a value, always. And when I started to push and say, well, what does this mean to you? What are your stories? What does this mean? And it became very clear that different companies have different definitions.
Totally.
Of what safety in a value is.
Looks like.
Sounds like.
Right?
And so, and it's not that one's wrong and the other's right. It means that when we get very clear on what our definitions, I always say that, what our definitions of a value is, we're able to understand, okay, this is what it means for us in our organization. We can start to hire based on what this looks like and how people would augment this value.
Yes.
And then we can turn away others. And that's okay.
Well, I like, in the work that we do, we often see similar values, right?
Yeah.
There's always accountability or some synonym. There's innovation, creativity, service.
Coffee.
Some teamwork. Yeah. There's probably like about 5 or so that always show up. But what I love is that when we go and define it, everyone has a completely different definition, including us. And that's where it's really fun.
And this is so cool. Whoa. But so like
it's okay, bring it up.
No, we take it to 11.
And it's like when you go and you sit with the leadership teams and you say, and I just did this recently with a client where their leadership team, someone was there 10 years ago when the values were created. For one of them, it was their first day on the job.
Yeah.
And so it was, okay, this is what these are our values. What does this mean to each and every one of you based on what this definition is?
Yeah.
Because we can even interpret definitions differently.
Totally.
And so when we can get that on the table and have this conversation, what do these really mean to everybody so that we're working from the same language and the same definition of a definition, tweak, we can get on the same page with, well, how are we making decisions based on what this value is?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the values are the underlying beliefs upon which we take aligned action. And if we understand that values are underlying beliefs, well, then we have to start understanding that there's people with beliefs that are influencing the definition, which will influence how they express it. And so we can't just say, here's our values, go forth and live them.
No.
Well,
Because they think that they're living them maybe, and it's not exactly, as we say. It's
Right.
exactly the way.
well, and as you grow, the founder who is the owner of these ideals that maybe has not articulated them is maybe not involved in the hiring.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, accountability. And that person just interviewed and they said accountability 10 times, but was it exactly? So it's like, it dilutes like a little bit with each new person.
Yeah.
Which is why you have to be so fanatical about it. It is this, it's not that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's a constant, like it's constantly moving. Every time you add a person, the culture shifts a little, it ebbs and flows, right? It's like a body of water. You're adding more drops in, it moves. And if you want it to be that culture, you have to continually keep saying, okay, this is the direction we're going. This
Yes.
is the direction we're going.
Yeah.
Like recognizing the good behaviors, right? Giving feedback when something doesn't quite align and allowing them to grow. Like you have to keep nudging it. You can't just throw it on the wall and be like, there you go. Even if you defined it, you've got to keep nudging it
Yes.
and massaging it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love that you just also highlighted was when you bring in more people. And because, so when I look at teams, tweak. I have a pinched neck, so sorry.
Do you want to sit on this side?
No, we're good.
Gotta look at the people here.
When I look at teams, I look at them as a neural circuit because BRP Consulting is my company because businesses are people. And so it's the business body. What would this business person be if they're an entity at the table? Within that is the teams, and the teams to me are neural circuits. And so what happens when we're adding in a neuron, another team member, into this already established neural circuit? How does that then reframe how this team is operating and functioning and firing and performing at its optimal level? What happens if there's a toxic person, although there's no such thing as toxic people, there is toxic behavior. What happens if we take this toxic, this neuron that's doing the toxic behavior out of the circuit and we don't address the behavior? Well, then that will come and fill in because that's already been within that neural circuit. And behaviors don't just die off. We have to be intentional about removing them. And so when we can start to understand, okay, well, it's the underlying beliefs, it's the values, it's the individuals and how their own personal values are influencing how they connect with the corporate values.
Yes.
How do we make these people speak to one another and understand why every single person is there? Because each has a role to keep this circuit performing at its optimal level.
I think strong personalities are so interesting. Like I picture like a river, and then all of a sudden you drop something in the middle, and it will divide. Like, and behaviors will do that. People will start following a strong personality, right?
Yeah.
And this is where things like clicks can happen, right?
Yeah.
It's like we think we're not in high school. We're in high school.
We're beyond that.
We are.
Right?
We talked about that last episode. Like, clicks are a thing, man. Like, they can be very toxic.
Yeah.
There's that, like, finding inclusivity and connection, and you can have groups that connect well together.
Yeah.
But there's a difference. There's that fine edge between a good team and click,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like how the other people feel around. Feel systems feel around it,
Yeah.
right? So no, I really like that, the neuro firing. But one of the things I think I heard about values, and I loved this, is I can't remember who said it, but there's some values that should be pay to play values. Like we always see construction companies, safety's our value. Well, like, are you going to really operate unsafely? Like, that's not even legally allowed. So, like, it has to be kind of a given.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I always try to push companies to think beyond what should be expected. Like, that's the bare minimum. Safety should be the bare minimum. Like, if you wanted to extrapolate that to, like, you know, we care or about our people or whatever, like, fine. Just, like, safety, I find is such an, I don't know, cop out. What's the better word for cop out?
I think cop out is right, because it's the same when companies say integrity is our value. I'm sorry, integrity is not a freaking value.
Thank you.
Because I would hope a company is saying these are our values. I would hope that your actions keep you in integrity with them.
Yeah.
So integrity itself is not a value, but when we're actually living the values that we purport to have, we have integrity. And so it's
the action of behaving with your values.
Yeah.
You know, if the word integrity resonates with you, but you compare it with a definition that explains what you mean.
Fair.
by it.
Yeah,
Right.
that's fair.
You
When
have
you
to
get very
exactly.
clear on the definition, but just to say we walk the talk, okay, but, which is what everybody seems to. But you know what? To your point,
Yeah.
Adam, a good colleague of mine, and she's down in the States. She has integrity of one of hers.
Mhm.
However, when you look at her definition of it, it's very different than a typical organizations of we walk the talk, we do what we say we will do.
Because isn't that the minimum to like be in business?
Yeah.
Like you have a business. You said you're gonna perform this operation. Like if you don't do it, that's not a business.
Yeah.
That's called a scam.
Yeah.
So like, but the one caveat that they said is like, okay, these pay to play, these you know, the bare minimum value words. They said the only time you should really think about using them is if in your industry, that's the thing that differentiates you. Right? So if
say
like,
more.
so let's say there's a whole bunch of, in an industry, like a vibe of like not being reliable, right? Like never showing up when they say they're going to do it. Like then you can be like, this is it is a differentiator in my industry because the rest of them, like the bulk you're going to get isn't. Then it's good to use those kind of words. But so many, like you go on probably 6 or 7 different construction company sites and safety, integrity, quality, safety, integrity, quality.
Yeah. I would like to meet the construction company who says, sorry, we don't provide quality, but go with us.
Right. This is what I mean. Like it's kind of like the basic what you have to do to perform.
Yeah.
But the thing I don't like, all those construction companies have the same values. You go in, their culture is grossly different.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel a lot of them haven't dug deep enough.
Yeah.
To really distill it, because it's not the same. When I walk in the doors of one, it's not the same as the other.
Yeah.
It's a totally different vibe. You guys haven't distilled it down. And so you're not attracting the right unicorns, as we say, into your business.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's so important. It is not every company is for everybody.
Exactly.
And that's okay. And that's a beautiful thing. And when we get super clear, these are our values. This is the definition. Tell us what this means to you in your role and your role and how you're going to be expressing it and living it in your day to day.
Yeah.
And the leadership team is aligned with that and also in step because they're not exempt. Then you'll bring in the right people, and the other people who are like,
This doesn't feel right.
I don't want this. This isn't for me.
They'll opt out. They'll opt out. And we want them to opt out.
And we want them, and like a hustle is not a bad thing.
No.
Like there's a lot of people that they want that in their culture.
Yeah.
And there's others who don't. And so it's just what's right for you in
Right.
the environment that you're in.
Like we love our team, but we had someone call us, what was it? Obnoxiously extroverted?
Obnoxiously extroverted.
And we were like, wow, okay.
They're like, this is toxic.
Yeah. To,
I'm
to
like-
them, it was just like,
Not their vibe.
Not their
yeah.
Not
which is
fair.
fair.
Well, which is funny too, because we have some very introverted people on our team.
Mhm, that is true.
So, like, I mean, maybe I'm just obnoxiously extroverted.
It's you.
Just me. That's the whole company.
Caitlin's having a realization this morning.
Yeah,
I'm the problem, it's me.
yeah.
So, you know, but they I think they enjoy it. Well, they stick around and they love us.
Hopefully.
But it's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be. You can still have diversity within those values.
Yes, yeah.
Right? It's not groupthink. No, but it is being able to rely on how you know somebody's going to show up when you're not there.
Yep.
Right? And to make decisions and to like run it through the values filter. And we had a hard decision a while ago, and I was sitting with my accountability team. So I'm in EO Grow.
Mm-hmm.
I just had my last session, which was an amazing experience, by the way. If anybody is accelerating their business fast, EO Grow, check them out. But I was sitting there and yep, I lost my train of thought. This is why I can't do this before coffee.
You're talking about trust, right? Yeah. Trust means a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I know in our business we talk like innovation, for example, and we tell people when we're hiring them, like, just hang on, because we love new ideas, we love crazy things, we love this type of stuff, but that is, by its definition, chaotic and inefficient. First, that would drive some people totally crazy.
It does.
But nothing part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas we love it. We try and make a space for it, like a contained space, but like
But still a
we
space.
try and like have that very much alive.
Okay, now I remember it. It's good. Here we go. See? Totally human. So we had to make a hard choice.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can't see the right path forward even. And then the guy who was running our accountability group said to me, like, run it past your values.
Yes.
Does it this? Is it this? And then I was like, well, yeah, it's this. And he's like, is it really? And I was like,
Yeah.
He's like, would this happen if it was this? And I was like, oh, okay, I needed that. So it's great to have people hold you to those values and like use them, right?
Yes.
Once you've defined them, once you've made them explicitly clear, but use them to help you make decisions. Like, is it this? Does it align? And sometimes you need another party to come in and like really push you to admit some stuff, right? But as soon as he said it, I was like, well, I know what the decision has to be.
Yeah.
Well, and it's I think a great for leadership, because when you're talking to people, giving them feedback, it's no longer you just bitching at someone for not doing what they say or whatever.
Yeah.
You've now agreed as a team to hold yourself to a higher ideal. So the conversation, instead of like, hey, you should really do this, that, or the other thing, it's like, we all agreed that accountability was our value and it meant this.
Mm-hmm.
Does your behavior reflect that or not?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and sorry. So you go.
That's
You
it.
keep
That's all I
going.
have.
Well, so couple things. Oh no. Is that hurt a lot. I totally lost it just because of the pain.
See?
Yeah.
We need more coffee here this morning, guys. It's my fault. I got it. Yeah.
So okay, yes. So when getting in the definition, you always go why.
Yeah.
Why is this? And that gets deeper into the real reason as to why is this value so important to us? What does this not look like? Okay, we got that clear. After a workshop I did with an IT company on their values with their team, one of the senior lead tech engineers came up to me after. I adore this fella. I do, because he's very devil's advocate. And so I knew if anybody in the room was going to push back, it'd be him.
Uh-huh.
And I would love it because he pushes back for a reason. Anyways, he came up to me after. He's like, Lindsay, I get values now. I was like, great. That's what the point of the workshop was. Huzzah. And then he takes it one step further. And this is the real power of values. And now we have a very clear understanding of what to look to when challenges happen, because we have very clearly defined how we respond to situations.
Yeah.
And we can pick the right path forward for us.
And that gives your people a sense of like, okay, I got this.
Yeah.
Right? Not so much fear of, so what if I mess this up?
Yeah.
Like, right? Well, I've got something there that I can rely on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And then I think as leaders too, is if our people can explain their actions through the values and they've aligned.
Yeah.
All right. Then.
Okay. Yeah.
It might not have been what I would have done, and we could have had that conversation, but you held up the values, and that's what I'm asking for.
And that's why you need this is what values look like in action.
Yeah.
This is what they don't look like.
Totally.
So there's complete
The don't do box.
The don't do box.
Yeah, 100%. It's not this.
Yeah.
I have heard of companies having their values, and then I can't remember the term they used for them, but they were like the anti-values, or something like that. And I thought that was interesting.
The anti-values, like antimatter.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
The black hole. It's like you right in the company.
Exactly. Right.
We nerd out a little.
Yeah. I don't know. Values are a funny thing. Like I even think of it in terms of, never mind my business, but my own family. Like if I were to define values for my family, what would they be? We've never done that, but I feel as though
Stephen Covey said you should.
Yeah.
Mm.
In 7 Habits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
should.
because and this is so important because as I had mentioned, like I was living values. I was living good values. I was living the values that had been modeled for me as I grew up by my parents who have great values, but they were not my values.
Wow.
And so even though some are the same, we have very different definitions because of how we express them.
Yeah.
And so within families, you can have the same word of a value, but you might have different definitions. And so how do you make sure that you're all operating, or at least aware of who's operating from what definition?
Yes.
So that there's not so much of this. And this is huge in family businesses, who, in particularly legacies, who they're coming with this legacy of these have been our family. Well, we're in a new world now.
Yeah.
So how do we continue to live these values of a family business in today's world? What does that look like? How does that express? How does that change the definition?
Right.
And how do we empower the rising generation to own these new definitions and empower the exiting generation?
Yeah. To trust them.
To trust them. To trust them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Family business is a whole additional dynamic.
It's a whole additional dynamic.
Right. And it can be complex, right? And there's a lot of additional layers that have to be considered.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's important, but it surprises me most people haven't gone through their own personal values exercise.
It doesn't surprise me.
Mhm.
Well, it surprises me because I know now how powerful it is.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Had I known, I would have done it long ago. Yeah.
But it's not it's personal values. You can go through a seminar, take a course, and like make a list, but it's not one and done. Like when I did it for myself, I think it was probably like 8 years before I got to a point where I was like, that's the one.
Yeah.
And now they haven't moved,
They've settled down.
but they've like, the synonym is like, oh, that's a better word. That
resonates
You
more.
swap that one out or whatever. Right?
Yeah, and they're all close. I don't think you would swing huge, but it's like
No.
you're refining.
But is it exactly? Is it
Yeah.
that one or is it something else? Right.
And I think that's really important. And I love this. So Adam and I were chatting, and one of my personal core values is kindness. Mine too. One of mine too. See, kinder. Okay.
What's our definitions though?
Oh, probably different. But we were talking about this, and he's like, "Well, Kate, kindness is like kind of a fluffy word to me." And I was like, "What?" I'm like, "Kindness is literally the deepest sense of love."
Mhm.
He goes, "Explain." And so we had this chat, right? Do you remember this conversation? I was like, kindness comes without judgment. I'm not judging where you are, what you've done, who you are. I am giving from a state of love, right? And I'm just giving with no need to get back anything. That is kindness to me. He goes, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's what compassion is. But kindness to me, I was thinking nice. Like, very surface level.
And this goes into a whole different
Right?
nice and kind. I want to be kind. I do not want to be nice.
Yeah, they're not. I don't think they're the same.
They're not the
Exactly.
same. And so my definition of kindness as a value for me is to do what's right, to do what's hard, and to do it with compassionate love. And so every day I have to make these hard decisions. But is this the right decision? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it with compassionate love. But nice. Geez Louise, you don't know what's behind nice.
No, you don't know.
And
You
that's a
don't
whole
have that all day.
like
Yeah.
Canadians,
We're not
we
nice.
need to get
Worst at it,
we
right?
need to get rid of nice.
Yeah.
Because nice is not, you can do way more harm with nice,
I think.
and you can hurt with kindness.
Yeah.
But you can heal from hurt. Harm you can't.
I like that. That's really.
So that's kind of
Yeah. I like that one. Good.
We actually had a team member come from another country and come to Canada, and that was one of the, I think, the most biggest learning curves with him is like how to speak Canadian. There's a lot of other places in the world that are much more direct.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, if you want to sell to someone in Canada, you just have to like talk to them about the weather for like half an
Jeez, it's so true.
hour, right?
Right?
So true.
Well,
Pull out the weather app and
relationship-based.
you'll have
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and south of the border, a lot more salesy,
Yeah.
right? A lot more like they want to be sold to. Like, in fact, if you start talking about the weather and how was your weekend, they're like, "Are you gonna sell me? Like, sell me!" Like they look for it a lot of times, and it's a
Mhm.
very different vibe. And in Canada, it's like, no, I want to trust you before I do any work with you.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know who you are a little bit.
We do. Yeah. Connect with the people.
Yeah.
And then the service.
Yeah, which I don't think is a bad thing. I mean, it slows down the sales process huge.
Mhm.
But that's not a bad thing because you end up doing business with people you're aligned with.
Mhm.
And I think that that's super important. When we talk about values to behaviors, it needs to extend to our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to understand their values so we know how they're going to show up,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think there has to be that alignment because nothing's worse than working with a client that doesn't align with your values. Because it's painful, it hurts, and I guarantee it's not profitable.
No.
I guarantee. Like, I don't care how much markup you put on that little bucker, it is not going to be profitable, and it's going to suck your soul.
The amount of time and energy you spend talking about it, bitching about it,
Oh,
talking people off the ledge, like,
seriously.
right? Yeah, we've had situations like that. Like
Oh yeah.
but then, you know, if you look at your values, maybe they're a client that's bringing in a significant portion of your income, but maybe the right decision is to fire them.
That's hard. It's hard.
It is. I cut off a relationship, a work relationship years back, and that was 50% of my business. And that really was the transition of my relationship with Nice to Kind.
Hmm.
And because
Yeah.
I cared more about this person, and I could see that we were going into something that could be potentially very negative and harmful, and I cut this off, and I could have done it in a better way because I didn't know how to have really hard conversations.
Right.
And we both gone our different ways, and we've come back together, and we're in a very healthy human-to-human relationship now. But I had to cut the business off.
Yeah.
So that we could come back to this.
Yeah.
But the business itself, it wasn't bad. But it wasn't where I was growing. We were going in different directions. Our
Yeah.
values were different in how we approached work. And it happens.
It does.
But in doing that, I then was able to really start to grow into this other area of helping people with the values and connecting and the mental health of a business. Because if a company's brand is misaligned with their culture, then the overall mental health of the organization is misaligned.
It's brutal.
And it is
brutal.
Yeah.
Because nothing is worse than thinking you're getting into bed with a company. You're like, yeah, I'm so excited to start day one. And you get there and you're like, whoa, this is not what they advertised.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a rug pull. It's freaking for my crypto people out there, it's a rug pull. And it's so frustrating because you sit there going, oh man, did I make the right choice? And then you have to wait 3 months because you're like, well, I just got this job. I don't want to quit. It's going to look bad on my resume. So you try to wait it out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you try to like, okay, yeah, I'm going to just kind of, and it is not good.
Mm-hmm.
It is not good. You have to have brand culture alignment.
Yes.
And then people are like, right? And people are like, I don't understand why you guys do video and like you like sometimes you do your like social media. For some clients will do social media, some clients get it. It's not for everybody.
Not an open advertising.
No, it's not. No, we're very picky on who we do social media for. But like when they were like, why do you do that? I was like, because you need to advertise the true soul of your business to attract the right people, not just the right candidates, the right clients.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the feedback that clients get, right, from their clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see your social, man, it's so good. You guys are so authentic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What you see is what you get.
There's definitely an appetite for connection, and you know, people say, the digital space is so noisy, whatever. That's exactly why. As soon as someone goes out there with authentic stuff, people pause, and it doesn't have to be like the best ones are the selfies.
Always,
right?
always perform the best.
In fact, we basically built our whole business off selfie videos,
Right?
right? Like just
Before
connecting with people,
Before we got guys who were way better at it than we were.
right?
Yeah.
So, but I think, you know, at the core of a lot of this, defining your values, communicating them, there's vulnerability there.
Yeah.
And I think in the business world, and outside of the business world, vulnerability is still very tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, I would say it's fairly new concept. Like Brene Brown has really started that movement around vulnerability. And I think that it's new. So it's going to take time for us to practice it as humans. And not everybody's practicing it. Right. And so then I think it's going to take 2 or 3 generations for it not to be so painful to be vulnerable. Right. Unless you've had an epiphany. Right. Unless you've had like a huge mindset shift, making that vulnerability jump is hard and it's a practice. And I think it's going to take a couple generations for people to get there. And we've got to teach it to our kids and their kids. And then you're going to see company. Well, we could go on for this stuff forever. And I know we're already like 5 minutes over, but the conversation is so freaking good. You know, we're going to see this shift. And if you don't think culture is important and you kind of do it off the side of your desk, like watch out. It's just a matter of time because the next generation's demanding it.
Yep.
They are demanding it. So you are just going to die a slow death.
Well, it's not even that they're demanding it. It's that studies show that when we're engaged in the culture, when people are engaged in a healthier culture, they perform better. So it's just a bottom line. It's a dollar and cents thing. It makes sense.
Yeah, but those stats are old, Lindsay. Those stats are old. Oh, like they're the 80s. Back in the 80s, they're like, yeah, culture. And everybody gave it lip service.
But no. There's studies now that are being done.
But it's still like,
but it's still lip service. But it's still okay. But when we look at the bottom dollars of companies who heavily invest in their people and their culture, those are the ones who are consistently
way higher profits
than revenue and retention. Because retention and engagement is a huge issue, right? And how could it not?
But here's the problem: is like companies go like, oh, I'm going to invest in a software.
Yeah.
They see it as a physical thing. It's done. Yeah. Right? They don't know what it means to invest. They don't know how much to invest in their culture. They don't like, what does it mean? How do I invest in my culture?
It's not hard.
It's not hard.
And it's not expensive.
Well,
but depending on the company. But
how much work you have to do.
Okay. That is depending on where you're at and where you want to go. But that's a big statement for me.
It doesn't have to be big broad strokes, right? Like I've seen amazing culture shifts happen because someone hung a whiteboard on the back of their cubicle and put a joke on there every day.
It's the tiny,
it's the little actions.
It's just like if there's an appetite for it, especially if things feel bleak, the tiniest little gesture.
Yes.
Because people they want it.
Oh,
so
100%.
Even if they don't know it, if they see it, they will grasp at it.
And this is why, like, culture experts like us are so important to come into a company because like the leadership wants to do, okay, what's the process? Like easy. It's about creating a process that creates space.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? Like, no, you got to create the space for connection. You got to create the opportunity and allow it to thrive.
It's like, let it see.
Yeah. And then it doesn't work. Okay. And then you try a different kind of space to create the connection. Okay, that worked. And then you tweak it. And it's constantly changing and constantly updating it, right? But it's not, you can't just plug in a system.
No.
You can't just write a procedure. It's little things, but the system is creating the space for it and allowing it to happen.
And that's because when you're trying to make these sweeping changes, you're really having to help people rewrite their beliefs.
Yeah.
And you can't do that in a sweeping change. It's all nudging,
right?
So it's the tiny little tweaks. So companies who go in and say, here's the big process. This is what we're going to change. These are the outcomes. Well, no, like that. Number one, that's scary and it's going to fail.
Yeah.
Because 70% of all change fails.
Yeah.
And that's because they're these larger sweeping things. But it's what are the tiny things? Okay, so we claim to have fun here. Fun is one of our values. And we're not seeing it. Well, hang that whiteboard and do a daily joke. Make sure it's not bad. Just kidding. The worse, the better. Have like a bad joke challenge for a week.
We do dad jokes.
It's like, Brilliant.
Yeah.
So it is.
Right.
It's those tiny little things. It's when you're starting meetings of like 2 or more people. Otherwise, it's just a solo talk.
Right.
Share a value story. So what have we? So this is the value of the week. What can we share about it?
Yes.
What did you do in your role this week? Right. So here's what I did. So it's really just putting it front and center people.
Well, and that like we have a program that's all about legacy stories, like building companies' legacy stories, because it's how people showed up in the behaviors when it was hard.
Yes.
Right.
Ooh.
Those epiphany moments where like, okay, this value was so strong and this could have been a catastrophe, or maybe it was a catastrophe, and that's okay. Like we go through that in businesses, but that legacy story sticks. So how do you immortalize it? How do you immortalize it? And so we create like the video story, right? So then it becomes part of your onboarding to learn.
Yes.
So that when I say, hey, do you remember, egg salad? You're like, oh, that one, that was crazy. And like now we have a language, right? But there's a whole story behind that.
Yeah.
Egg salad, right? And everybody else is like, what are they talking about? But now we know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's almost like this secret language, which makes you feel a part of something.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so another good book is what is it? The Legacy? What with
The All Blacks.
the All Blacks.
Oh.
They talk about like speaking the same language, and they talk about like ritualize to actualize.
Oh, I'd love that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, my
I do
husband
too.
would love that too.
You gotta read that book. It's amazing.
Okay.
All right, we are like way over time. It has been amazing talking to you. I feel like I'm going to like end this and be like talking for another hour here. So really appreciate you guys for checking us out and tuning in. And we will see you next week on Culture Live, and have a great weekend.